I really like to read about social science and psychology, and unfortunately, a lot of it is bunk science. It's a terrible science, and it's written by people who misunderstand how stuff works, how human beings works, how social relationships work, and how societies advance and stuff like that. Because it's very easy to see a correlation everywhere, but it's not really easy to prove that there's a causation when you see a correlation. So this will be a presentation of why some things are as they are and why they may seem one way but be another way. For example, here we have a chart. I just found it on Google. We have happiness and then income. This is of course not a scientific chart, but the scientific version of it will look pretty much similar to this. You have income increase at the beginning level. So for example, if you earn $2 a month and go to $4 a month, then your happiness will, on average, with this group, will increase a lot. And then you go to $8 a month or $16 a month, and your happiness will increase by a lot. So for example, if you have a lot of poor people, their happiness will increase if they get more money, and especially if they earn more money than their neighbor. Then we can see an effect. Okay, so maybe their happiness won't really increase if they buy a smartphone, but if their neighbor doesn't have a smartphone, then this wealth and the use of the wealth will increase their happiness, because now they feel better off than the people around them. But as you also see here, we have actually discovered that this effect, it kind of falls off. So when you earn about I don't know, maybe $70,000 a year, then the effect kind of disappears. So I think maybe for you or for your family, if you earn that much of money a year, then the effect kind of edges off, and earning $1 million a year or $2 million a year won't really increase your happiness, at least not on the average. So for example, if someone earns 100 millions a year and someone earns $1 billion a year, then this guy who earns $1 billion a year won't have an increase of happiness tenfold, not even on average. And that's where you need to understand here, because where do you look at stuff? Everything you see in the society, everything you see in human beings, in groups, you look at the effect of stuff, right? You look at, okay, what about the parents? What effect have the parents on kids? Well, when I read social science, they usually find some study that proves that there's an effect. Okay, that's correct. Parents have an effect on kids, especially if they beat them up really hard or they starve their kids in extreme ways. Then this will be measurable in adulthood. There will be a correlation between how the parents treat their kids and how they grow up if there's an extreme negative effect there. So we know that there's this effect, but usually I see people use this effect to kind of prove to themselves or to the readers that this effect is just linear. So the more happiness the parents give you, the children, the more happy they will become as adults, or the more intelligent they will be, or the better human beings they will be, or the more helpful they will be to other human beings. And again, just because you proved an extreme does not mean that you have proved that there's a linear connection with these two effects all the way to the top. It just means that you proved the extreme. Now you know the extreme, you see the extreme. We use numbers to find out something, and then we see something with our eyes. Okay, we can see these numbers, they're there. And now we know how it works. But what if a father is really great, and then there's a father who's really great? Is there a difference there? Will their children grow up to be different because they were different? Well, what we see here is pretty much like the happiness and income chart, where these kind of effects, they're not really found. We can do some studies, we can try to investigate how fathers and mothers raise their kids and then look at the effects, but it's really hard to find something there. It's like we some people want to find something there because I mean we have found something in the extremes, right? If a father is really bad, we can see an effect, and if he's good, then we don't really see a correlation between what he does and how the children grow up. And then if he's really great, we also don't see a correlation there. So it's kind of like these children, if they have enough, then they grow up fine. It's like your vision, right? If you grow up in a dark room, then of course you will have problems with your vision later on, because you need to develop your vision. It needs to develop from your baby and when you're a child, at least a small child. So you develop your vision and then you have it for the rest of your life. And if it doesn't develop in your early childhood, then you probably won't ever get it. And if you grew up in a dark room when you had a little bit light here and there, then maybe you will have developed some of the vision, but not all of it, not fully. But we don't tell children to train their eyes in certain ways. We just assume they're trained naturally, and there's, as far as I know, there's not really a book that tells you how to train your kids to become good at seeing stuff. It just happens, and it happens. We are born and evolved as a species, as an animal, to just evolve a good vision, or at least a good enough vision. And the same is the case with our personality and our intelligence. If we have a good enough environment, then we will have a good enough qualities in intelligence and personality and vision. We will develop to be good enough, unless of course we lack some genes, for example genes for vision, or we have some genes that don't make us very intelligent, or we have some genes that make us kind of crazy in our brain. Then even if we grow up in a normal environment, then of course the development won't go perfectly. So if someone proves an effect for some social environment stuff, then okay, they have proved an effect in one point, not for everything. So what can it be also? It can be trial and error, for example. Trial and error is a huge influence on social science, and that's something you really, really need to focus on. Trial and error is probably a greater influence for how we learn and how we adapt as a society than many other things. It's just how we see something, we try it, and then we error, and then we try something again. This is how people develop. This is how societies develop. So it's not really, as you see here, there's not really some one positive influence, but it's just a collection of knowledge, a collection of errors, and a collection of tries. So even kids need to trial, and they need to error, and then they also develop. So the more you can try, the more you can error. On the safe side, the more you can learn. And this is how the society we have today became what we are today. We just tried a lot of stuff, and then when something worked, we kind of told our neighbor, hey, this works, try this. And he would tell us some other hints about some other stuff that he had tried and he had succeeded with. It's just how evolution works. We have a lot of errors in our genetics over time. The organisms have errors because of radiation, so we have some errors, and then of course most of these errors are just errors, but some of these errors will also be a bit more successful errors. So there will be errors in a way that affect our phylogenetics, so they affect our traits, and then these traits will be selected via evolution. So trial and error. There's no great effect here. There's no boogeyman controlling society or controlling people. It's just randomness. And this is what this is the last slide. The randomness is also a huge effect. Trial and error, it's something I always, every time I read a psychology article or especially a social article, social science article or history article or anything like that, always think, is this trial and error? They learn it by trial and error, or where there's some genius people sitting and inventing stuff at home. You can be an idiot and be useful in a society by advancing it. just by luck. And this is also the other effect, as I showed with this happiness income. As you can see, when income increases to a certain level, then happiness doesn't increase that much with more income. And then you have the effect of randomness. So there can be more happiness and less happiness. It can be due to genetics. But again, if everyone has the same genetics and they have the similar environment, then randomness plays a huge role. So also look at randomness and look at all other effects that you have out there. You look at genetics, you look at the environment, but you also look at all other kinds of effects that come from all kind of directions that you kind of cannot measure, you cannot see. If you have found an effect, for example, with intelligence, we have found an effect. We know there's a huge genetic effect. So we know intelligence, okay, and 50% of our personality and maybe 80% of our intelligence in a modern society is inherited, so it's genetic. We know that, and we have pretty much proved it. We have discovered that again and again in all kind of studies. But there can also be other effects. That's just what I wanted to say. And every time you read some social studies, you need to think about where the effect is from and how does it appear.